We'd like to welcome you today. I think we have some exciting news that we're taking a step towards looking at a potential bid. And first, before we start, I want to acknowledge those up on the stage. President Pershing, thank you. Raise your hand. Stand up. We appreciate all you do. This was a great venue. We hold a lot of events here, and we appreciate the university and all that they do to help us on a lot of fronts. So again, thank you, and tell everyone else thank you. But before we start, we'll go from the mayor, Mayor Biskupski over there. Say hi, Mayor.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mayor.
The governor, President Niederhauser,
Hello.
Speaker Hughes,
Aloha.
Aloha, and Frazier. And this is the first time I think Frazier's been underdressed than I.
Yep,
Because,
first time.
you know, usually I'm in jeans and he's in a suit and he's come back from some big business deal. And now I'm in a suit, so it's nice to see that. But anyways, we know that you saw a press release that went out just Monday. And the press release talked about our public and elected officials up here on the stage creating an exploratory committee for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And I'd really like to thank Team Utah. We have a tremendous team that we've worked on this. We've been keeping the ball in place for years. And we couldn't do it without our public and elected officials. When I travel and when I do things, and we've done a lot in sport here, when I go out and tell them the team we have, our public officials, and all they're doing for sports, including the Olympics and other things, we're just not seeing that at the level we are here. So we owe it to you guys to thank you for all your support. It's a key part of what we do and a key core competency when we're out trying to market sports. So thanks for everything, and thanks for all your help. Now, talking a little bit about back when we had the games here, we thought it would be interesting to go and look at some of the data and tell you what did the impact of the games have. Well, if you remember right, the TV now, I was talking to Frazier and we said, geez, there was no Twitter back then. There was no Snapchat, there was no Instagram, YouTube even. So when you start talking about the numbers we garnered back then versus what you could now, it's significantly different. But back then we had 2.1 billion in direct spending related to the Olympics. We had 35,000 job years. 35,000 job years. 2.1 billion viewers, 13 billion viewing hours, and it was in 160 countries. So that was in 2002, 15 years ago. So the impact on the state of Utah, the impact to our community has been significant. And we anticipate that with the social media that we just mentioned, that would only go up if we had a chance to host the games again. So with the Exploratory Committee in 2012, we also had an Exploratory Committee that we looked at future games. At that point in time, we were thinking about 2022 as a potential. And that Exploratory Committee came back favorable, mentioning that we ought to look at the games again. Now, unfortunately, the U.S. didn't put a bid city forward. We also have had since then, in 2015, the legislature put together a concurrent resolution. The governor signed it, and the speaker and the president, that talked about us remaining ready, willing, and able. And you probably hear that tagline, ready, willing, and able. And so we've been following that. And again, we've been following the admonition of the governor and our legislature and our public officials, and we think nobody is more ready, willing, and able than we are to host a future games. There was some interesting news over the weekend. We heard a couple of things. Friday we heard that the USOC might look at bringing a games back to U.S. soil, a winter games. And they talked about potentially 2026 and 2030. So that, of course, got our interest. And we thought, well, that's interesting. We ought to look at being in the games. Then on Sunday, Innsbruck, which was kind of a sentimental favorite. They hosted it in the late 60s and then were the ones that took the games back for Denver. And they stepped up to host the games in '76. They went through a public referendum and it failed. So I think Frazier and I and a few others, there were many, many texts and emails and exchanges that day because all of a sudden we saw the Friday's news, then we saw the news on Sunday. And so As we were working on this exploratory committee, we thought there was an opening. We still think there's an opening if the U.S. will bid on another games. So ready, willing, and able, you'll hear that time and time again. We've brought 600 sporting events to the state of Utah. We've generated hundreds of millions of dollars of media value. The economic impact's been staggering since the games. And so we're excited to be here in a position. I look forward as a co-chair, working with the people on the diocese here and all of the other people that have been established with this Olympic and Paralympic Exploratory Committee. Now I'd like to introduce a friend, somebody that we've been known to get out and play a little tennis. And when he won't get back to my emails, sometimes I'll run him a little harder around the tennis court. But he's had a great vision for sports. He's had a great vision for Olympics. He's done things that we couldn't do without a leader like Governor Herbert. So I'm going to turn the time over to Governor Herbert, then we'll hear from the mayor, and then we'll hear from the president, the speaker, and Frazier, and we'll go to that point in the program. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff. This is a significant occasion. It's a new opportunity for us, and I appreciate the work of many and those who've gone before and put us in a position now to maybe repeat. I appreciate Jeff and our Sports Commission. We have the tagline, the state of sport here. We're involved in many events, which the Sports Commission helps to organize and put on. And more we're discovered as a outdoor recreation paradise, as well as an sporting event paradise here in the state of Utah. And we appreciate the good work. You know, the biggest event we've ever had has been hosting the 2002 Winter Olympics. So this is an event that was kind of, I've said before, kind of our coming out party as a state, where we hosted the world. And the world in many ways discovered us through new eyes, new lenses, and new perspective as far as what Utah has to offer. And I appreciate the fact that we have maybe an opportunity because of events that have taken place. We've always had an interest. We've talked about this for many years. Can we do it again? Should we do it again? I think we believe collectively that we have the best venues, the best location, the best snow, really to host the Olympic Games again here, and at least try to approach the success we had before. By all accounts, we were the best Winter Olympics in history being hosted here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And we had revenue over expenses, so it was a profitable event for us. And we've been able to use that money to help maintain the venues that we have already in place. So we have a leg up on this as far as the sites and the locations. I expect that some people will ask, you know, why would you want to do this again? It's not without, a significant effort by the community and by government and their role to play. But why would you want to do it again? And I want to just tell you, it's not unprecedented. Lake Placid, New York did it in 1932 and again in 1980. St. Moritz in Switzerland did it in 1928 and 1948. Innsbruck in Austria did it in 1964 and 1976. And we probably understand that, LA, Los Angeles, is set to host the games in 2028. But they also did it in 1984 and 1932. So it'll be 3 times for them. And as I look at the summer games, I look at Los Angeles and California, they are uniquely suited. They have great venues there, great weather for what they need to do for summer games. It's accessible by the world to come in there to the international airport. But I look at Salt Lake City and Utah when it comes to the winter games, and I could say the same thing. We are very conveniently located. The expansion of our airport that we see taking place is only going to make it better. You can get to the venues in really an hour or less that we have here from the 2002 Winter Olympics. So convenience, accessibility, great vistas and venues that are part of the Olympic Games, hotel accommodations, which has only expanded since 2002 to make us even better prepared. So again, I appreciate the fact that we're in a unique position as a state. Last but not least, as I recall and going back through there, and many of you are involved, see Spence Eccles in the back, who's been involved in the Olympic movement forever as a participant, as an athlete himself, and helping us to come together as a community. And therein lies, I think, the great strength that we have as a community. We are collaborative. We do cooperate. We do work together for the good of the whole. We're better doing that than any state in America, maybe any place in the world. And that ability to bring the community together in a common goal, that esprit de corps that comes with hosting Olympics, the pride that comes with hosting the world, and saying, we welcome you here to this great state of Utah. We have something to offer you, and put on a great sporting event, the best event in sport there is out there, the Olympics. It gives us some pride. I know that as I get around the country, I still have people say to me, we saw the Olympics on television. What a beautiful state. And again, the TV doesn't do it justice. Those who've come here and participated know what a beautiful state we have. But those who have come here also add to this comment about what a beautiful state by saying what wonderful, beautiful people you have. We are friendly, we are welcoming. Again, that's the secret sauce we have to make these Olympic Games really work for us and for the Olympic movement and for the world. So we see this as an opportunity to at least take a look and see if we know we're capable of doing it. The Exploratory Committee that we'll put together here should take a look at and say, should we do it? And what is it going to take us to, in fact, replicate 2002 and maybe even make it better in 2026. So congratulations to one and all. Thanks for all that others have done to bring us to this point, that we are on the radar screen, that people say, Utah, you need to bid. You ought to bid again to host the Winter Olympics one more time. So I say, hey, let's take a chance. Let's take a look at it and see what we can do. Thank you very much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for being here. Salt Lake City is, as you know, a very proud member of the Olympic family. We value our long-standing relationship with the International Olympic Committee and the USOC, and we are eager to explore any opportunity that should present itself to host the Games again. As mayor of the Olympic City, I cheer on all host cities as they prepare to host the Games. We are excited about Los Angeles hosting the 2028 Games, and we want them to be greatly successful. I was a legislator back in 2002 when we hosted the Games here. And what I remember most is the spirit of sport and how great it was to celebrate sport all around the world in such camaraderie and in such faith in how we as a community can come together internationally. Salt Lake City was the most recent U.S. city to host the Olympic or Paralympic Winter Games in 2002. Now is the time to prepare a detailed accounting of our ability to do what we did before, and hopefully even better. I'm very pleased to be a part of this effort, and I look forward to the work of this committee and what we are capable of presenting to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Governor. It's exciting for me to stand here today and to be part of this effort on the Exploratory Committee. I'm the co-chair with Jeff Robbins and Fraser Bullock, and I look forward to working with them and determining whether we should move forward with the Olympics. I think it's very positive, and I'm excited about being part of that effort. I'm with a couple of co-chairs that have a lot of experience with the Winter Games and also with legacy sports here in Utah. And they've added bring a tremendous value to this effort. So I look forward to working with Jeff and Fraser. Thank you. In 2012, an exploratory report was commissioned to determine whether we should consider hosting the Games a second time. And then that was updated in 2015 and 2017 again. Measure twice, cut once. The results were clear. Utah is ready, willing, and able. And you've heard that before, and you'll hear it again, because we are ready, willing, and able. Just yesterday, well, no, 2 days ago, the Legislative Audit Committee received a report from our auditor, legislative auditor, laying out our Olympic venues, the Legacy Foundation. Colin's here today, and we found that it's being run very well, and we applaud that. And we also found that we need to put some money into those venues, $40 million over 10 years. And the speaker and I are committed to see that we do that, making sure that our venues, the ski jump, the oval, all these facilities need money, and the foundation is great to have, but it doesn't, or the what do you call that? The endowment. That's right. Thank you. It doesn't quite cover it, and the state's going to have to step in. The result of the last Winter Olympics is amazing. Look what it did for Utah. We are the place of winter sports. 60% of the Olympians train here in Utah. And we can do this again and do it well, I believe. So, having studied this now more than twice, I believe that this committee now will move forward and determine that we can move forward with games a second time, and then maybe in 30 years again, but or after that. But at least for the near future, we want to do this. The public enjoy the volunteer opportunities, and we host these events very well. So thank you very much. This is an exciting time for Utah, and I'm thankful to be part of it. Mr. Speaker.
It's a pleasure to be here. I just want to go back. I think all of us have fond memories in 2002. For me, my son was born. We were at the hospital, and out the window, as we were celebrating the birth of my son, we saw the Olympic torch running towards the cauldron and the beginning of our Winter Games. It was a big moment for us. I then took my college student now, Sophie, who wasn't quite 3 years old at the time, and we enjoyed our time. I took a lot of pictures in the Olympic Village and the venues, because I wanted her, although she was young, I wanted her to have a memory of the moment that we were all experiencing together. Fast forward to today. Since that time, 175 national and international events, winter sports events, have occurred here in our community. We have only grown. Whatever Salt Lake City was, whatever Utah was in 2002 in preparation for and holding the Winter Games, you can only point to this state and recognize how much more this community means to Olympic sports today. We had an audit, as was mentioned by our president. We have some anyway costs. We have an endowment that for 15 years has done a phenomenal job, and if you saw from the auditor's report the kind of progress we've made since 2002, I would dare you to find a city who's hosted the Olympic Games that has done more and has embraced the Olympic spirit as much as this as Salt Lake City and as Utah has in that time with that endowment. But we have anyway costs. We need to now look over the next 10 years, and we have investments to make sure that the momentum we have, the spirit of the Olympics that we have, regardless of if there was a bid or not, that we continue to be the state, to be the community, to be the place where 60% of Olympians come to live, even if it's a second home, and train, that we continue that forward. So when you're a city or a state and you have those anyway costs that you're already committed to, and then you see the opportunity to host the games yet again, I would love to take that Pepsi challenge with any of these other cities and tell me who's in a better place to be able to host these games and carry on that spirit, Olympic spirit, and magnify it to the degree that we have the potential to do here in Utah. So I'm proud to be part of this exploratory committee. I am bullish on Salt Lake City and in Utah, and very proud of the work we've done, and I think we have certainly earned serious consideration here in our U.S. Olympic Committee as well as the International Committee. Thank you.
One of the things that you learned during the Olympics is Sponsors, that would be a Coke challenge rather than a Pepsi challenge. Just saying. So 15 and a half years ago, I remember being right here at the culmination of 37,000 milestones that we had to accomplish during those years. And here we were at closing ceremonies, and Mitt and I and our wives and the Governor Levitt and Jackie, we went on the roof to watch the fireworks, the last milestone. It was great. Such a special time, where we'd come together right after 9/11 to unify the world. It's a special thing to host the Olympics. And then, in 10 days, we're going to host the Paralympic Games. And I'll never forget some of the marvelous experiences there, particularly the gold medal sledge hockey game where USA came out with the gold. Unbelievable athletes who perform at an extraordinary level. We learn a lot from them. So today, when we look at Salt Lake City, it is unique in the world. We are the only city who put on the Olympics that all the venues are in full use, even busier than before. That's what the IOC wants to see, and the only place they can see it is here. We have lived up to being an Olympic city, a great host, and as a result of that, we're ready to do that again. Now, there's a lot of work, because what we have to figure out is we go through every element of hosting the games and saying, are all the pieces in place, can we make it work? And so we put together a committee, an exploratory committee, and we have a board, and then we have the members of the committee itself, where the work will go on to then present to the board for their input, feedback, and approval. So let me just introduce those members of the committee who are here today. When you hear your name, please stand, wave, and recognize that they're not all here. And we will be adding more people to this committee over the next several weeks. So to begin with, we've talked about our co-chairs, we've talked about everybody up here who are members of the board who will provide the oversight. Then other members, first of all, we have athlete representation. We do this for the athletes and to recognize them and help them. So we're delighted, an Olympic legend, Eric Heiden. And I don't see Catherine here, Catherine Rainey Norman. She's probably on assignment somewhere.
Waving in the back.
Oh, Catherine, are you back there? There she is, way back there. Okay, glad to see you. We have Noelle Picus Pace, not here. I saw her run in Sochi. Unbelievable. It was so great. Derek Parra, another Olympic legend. And Chris Waddell, who is the symbol of the Paralympic movement. Just unbelievable person. What you've accomplished in your life is incredible. And then we have some business leaders who will be giving us advice and direction along the way. We're going to start with Jeremy Andrus, who is head of Traeger Grills, Skull Candy, and kind of the next generation. Some of us who are a little bit older need to teach the next generation how to put on games for that. Who said 30 years again? They'll keep coming back. We have Lane Beatty. He was our state Olympic officer. Lane and I worked together a lot, and he was just a fabulous partner. Right, Lane? Fabulous partner. Cindy Crane. Rocky Mountain Power was an incredible, we had rings on the hills because of you, which was so great. Spencer P. Eccles. He worked at Snow Basin the last time, and the men's downhill, everything, just did a fabulous job. Becky Kearns. Becky, thank you, from Park City. Dave Layton, I don't believe is here, but he's on the committee. We have Al Mansell, who's just been a great support all the years through. Peter Moscondis, not here today, but he's a member. Steve Miller? He just left. Steve Price, there we go. And Jim Sorensen Jr., who is, I don't see him here. He's traveling. But you get an idea of the strength of the business leadership that's going to be part of this. Now, the committee, who's actually going to do all of the technical work, and there's a lot to be done, beginning with Andy Bierman. I saw Andy, yes. And myself, Natalie Gochner, we know she's a legend. She'll be on the committee. Colin Hilton, who runs our legacy venues. Colin and I and Brett and Grant Thomas have already been meeting for quite a while to start working through this technical process. Brett Hopkins, who is not here, he runs Garf Enterprises. He was our CFO during the Olympics. He also consulted with every Olympic Games, post our games, through 2012. So he knows his work. And then we have Molly Mazzolini. There's Molly. Infinite Scale kind of got started at the Olympics and has grown her business. That's a great success story of just seeing a great business emerge from the Olympics. And then we have Jeff is on, and then Grant Thomas. Grant Thomas is actually in Beijing now, helping them in their preparation for the Olympics. He's on the evaluation commission for all of the Olympic Games around the world. And he was part of our team 2002. And if you think of the expertise that we have around the table is unparalleled anywhere in the world. It's not even close. We understand where things are. And then we have Justin Toth from Ray Quinney Nebaker, who is going to handle the legal side. Oh, no. Okay. Deposition. Okay. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Not yet. Hopefully. So now the committee, we have a lot of work to do. We're going to form 6 working groups, and we're going to pull in some of our volunteer friends who want to help. The budget, I'll come back to that in a moment. We're going to update the report. Jeff and Colin have already been updating our 2012 report. The Utah statistics and related information, what really happened from last year? What was the impact? The venues, we're going to go around and talk to all the venues and see if they're ready to host again. Our friend Mr. Nixon's already signed up to get going. Environment and climate, and then legal. Those are the 6 areas. Now, I'll just describe the one nuance that's really challenging. If we were hosting standalone games again, it would be a no-brainer relative to the revenue streams. But because we're back-to-back potentially with LA, we have to make sure there are enough sponsor dollars to go around. They're the top priority. They have the bid awarded. They're hosting the games. We need to make sure anything we do only enhances the success of their games. The question is, how can we have back-to-back games and navigate the domestic sponsorship category, which is hundreds of millions of dollars, where we can still have enough revenues to make sure that we can host our games in a responsible fashion. And so one of the things that we're going to have to work through is looking at how can we reduce our budget even further. And the International Olympic Committee actually has an initiative to pursue that because they recognize games are too expensive. And so we'll be working through that and see with lower domestic sponsorship dollars, can we lower our costs enough to make sure we're not at risk and we can host great games. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we're going to need to work through over the next 90 days. And we've got a great team, great people, and hopefully we'll have another 37,000 milestones and another celebration of closing ceremonies right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser, and thanks to everybody else up here. Now, a few things I heard. I don't know if you heard them, but I did. I heard team. We have the best team that there is. Expertise. Fraser just outlined some of the expertise. Venues. Now, I heard funding. Now, the interesting thing about what our legislators just talked about was we don't have to build new venues. We have to do a little refreshing. And so for them to be willing to step up and help lead the charge and get some more funding for our venues is terrific. Terrific news. That will be heard because that's important. One other thing I heard out of the speaker's mouth is it's usually Red Bull, not Pepsi or Coke. So that's the other thing that I put down. It's usually Red Bull. Now, one other just interesting note that I saw today, and it says 11:37 a.m. October 19th. It says IOC open to discussing 2026 bids from multiple U.S. cities. Now, this was a news source. It was not an official statement, but a news source that does cover the Olympics quite closely. So I thought that was interesting, but that tells you how fluid this has been for all of us working on this. This is just as this morning. So the dynamics are certainly interesting at best. The deadline that Fraser talked about is February 1st, so we've got to move quickly. We've got a lot to do, a lot of work to do, and so we hope to have a report, or we will have a report by February 1st to the governor, the mayor, our legislature, about the outcome of this report. And of course, we think we're ready, willing, and able. We think we're prepared. I think we're prepared. And if the USOC on March 31st has a city that they submit to the IOC, we want to be that city. Now we're going to have a little bit of some question and answer period that I'm going to kind of lead. So if you have questions, we don't have a lot of time, but maybe 5 or 6 questions that you have of the committee up here. Lisa's always the first one to raise her hand. It's like in school. So we'll have a few answers and questions and hopefully answers. So Lisa.
Is there a gold medal for being the first person to ask questions?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm interested in how the $40 million investment in facilities will be handled. When Salt Lake bid for the USOC endorsement for 2002, well, for 98, they agreed to pay back the $59 million that taxpayers put into building the initial facilities. Will there be a similar guarantee that that $40 million that taxpayers are being asked to invest to, as you say, spruce up these facilities, will that be repaid if Salt Lake gets the games again and if there are profits available?
Well, why don't we turn that over to our legislators, since they're the ones who brought that up. Is that okay?
I'm happy to take that question. Look, I describe those as anyway costs. Much of those are costs that we think would be an important investment for our state, whether we were attempting to host the games again or not. We think that our legacy has built, there's been a great return to our state, and I think it's an important investment that we have that we would want to put those dollars and invest those dollars regardless. There may be some in addition to, but certainly that $40 million that the auditor identified, I think are dollars that we as a state would prioritize and not expect the games to pay back.
And Lisa, we've already been appropriating funds to these facilities over the last couple of years to keep them up and to maintain them, because it's important to our brand here in Utah that we are the place of winter sports, and we need to keep that up. And so we'll be investing. If you look at the audit report, there was 3 recommendations by the auditor on how we would do that, and so we'll be looking at those during the session and begin, I believe, making those appropriations.
So you agree that they would not be repaid?
We're not anticipating any kind of repayment because this, like the speaker has well said and articulated, these are anyway costs to keep Utah as the brand of winter. This is the place of winter sports, and the returns to Utah are tremendous, and we want to do them regardless.
So it's an investment in our future Olympic bid. Is that what you're saying?
It's just in our brand of the place of winter sports.
Governor, any thoughts, comments?
Well, the legislature controls all the money, so
I know.
whatever they say. I think, we've had the discussion.
Is
but,
that being recorded?
Yeah, I like it. He thinks that. That's very good.
I want to play back on that.
It's a unique circumstance. I assume every time we do this, and if we do this multiple times over history, it'll be a little bit unique each time. But we've invested in these venues. We've done a good job. The model we had before was, let's see if we can make them profitable and set up a legacy and endowment, which we've done that, paid the money back. So I think probably some of this stuff is fluid, but I like what the speaker says when he says these are anyway costs, meaning that we're going to have to spend the money to spruce these venues up just to keep our brand in place and to keep us doing what we're doing. So it's kind of an outside the Olympic process. And we're going to be very respectful of taxpayers' dollars, as we always are. But this is mostly going to be funded by private money. It's going to come from the private sector. We just happen to be fortunately in a position we can do it a lot less expensively than probably any place else in the world.
That work? Okay, any other questions?
To revisit the past a little bit, Salt Lake City also got into a little trouble with the Olympics. There was a bribery scandal. When you go for a bid this time, do you think that the culture of the IOC has changed, or are you expecting more of the same?
I think Fraser's answered that question before.
Yeah, so the culture of the IOC has changed. They did a restructuring, but most notably what's happened in the award of 24-28, it's a completely different model. Because it used to be, well, let's go to the IOC session, let's have a vote, and there are 4 candidate cities, and you do a first ballot, second ballot, third ballot. In this case, because they had 2 viable cities, they said, let's talk to both of them, and it was Thomas Bach, the president of the IOC, and his executive board. They met with the 2 cities. And so what they did is they said, based on this, here is our recommendation to the membership of the IOC. And then the IOC ratified that recommendation, which then takes out the very uncomfortable part of the process. So I'm hoping they will continue to follow that precedent that they did this last time, and they've indicated that they will.
Yeah, and I think just one other comment on that. You know, we held arguably the most successful Olympic Winter Games ever, and went through 9/11, some challenging times, and so to do what we did, my hope is everybody focuses on that. That was pretty remarkable. And I had a discussion with the AP yesterday about this, and I think they thought that was right. I mean, we remember now all the great things that happened, and if we have another opportunity to bid, we think that'll be the case again. So, another question?
You mentioned the 2026 and 2030 Winter Games. Is the Exploratory Committee looking into bids for both, or could you just clarify how that works?
Well, I'll take a crack and then Fraser can answer. Right now, the USOC is the one that will determine if they submit a bid for either 2026 or 2030. March 31st, if the USOC decides they want to select a city and put that candidate city forward, they will have to make that decision and do that. That would be for 2026. But as you've seen with Los Angeles and Paris going back in the dual award, so they awarded 2024 and 2028 at the same time, you know, there's certainly some sense that that could happen again. So for us, you know, we want to be respectful of LA. LA's done a terrific job. They worked their tails off to get the games, and so we don't want to do anything that's injurious to them. But we are also cognizant that it could be packaged again. So, Fraser, do you want to say a little more?
Yeah, just the precedent that happened last time of LA and Paris being awarded at the same time. We asked them, Thomas Bach, is that a one-time event, or what could it happen for winter? He said, absolutely, it could happen for winter. So even if we were focused mostly on 2030, we have to be in the process for 26 in case there is a dual award. And 30 is probably a little more comfortable for LA because we come after them, we have our own marketing period. 26 would be a little more challenging. But as you see the fluidity of what's happened over the past 4 or 5 days, so many moving parts, who knows what's going to happen in 26? And so we have to be open to both, probably leaning more towards 30, but we just have to watch the dynamics play out.
Yeah, and I think just this article just today claiming that the IOC is open to discussing 2026 bids with multiple U.S. cities is just an indication of how fluid it is.
In 2002, you said that the games, I believe you said it generated $2.1 billion and 35,000 jobs. Is there any kind of a ballpark on what it would be, or extrapolations as far as 2026 or 2030?
Well,
And how much would it cost overall to stage? Is there any numbers being floated?
and that's part of the report in some of those areas that it may not be current. But Fraser, go ahead.
Yeah, so if we were on a standalone basis, as I talked about, where we could have sponsorship, domestic sponsorship, independent of LA, our budget would probably be in 2017 dollars somewhere around 1.6 billion. Now, that excludes any federal money for security and things like that. That's the OCOG budget. But with revenues coming down a little bit potentially, can we reduce our budget, say, down to 1.2 or 1.3 billion? Based on the fact that we have experience, we have the plans in place, we could hire people later, can we get it down to that level to help us in that gap? That's going to be the key thing that we're gonna look at. So when you talk about total dollars spent, it's probably less than last time because we don't have to build the venues, but that's to our benefit economically in making this model work this time in a different way.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the advantages we have is cost. We can do it for less with all the venues in place and all of the infrastructure. You know, the mayor's done a great job at the airport. Talk a little bit about the airport. When we were putting our FIFA bid in, and we have to go down in about a month to visit the folks in Houston, they talked about two really important things if we held a bid again. One was the airport, because of the ease of getting in and out and the renovation that's going on, and the transportation downtown. So why don't you say a few words about the airport? Anybody, does everybody know what FIFA is? World Cup, soccer, football? So it's a great event. We're going to have to talk President Pershing into doing a little bit of expansion of the stadium, I think. But I think we've got a good shot at that. So anyways, this is arguably the second biggest event in the world next to the Olympics. So we're really close.
So, yeah, Salt Lake City International Airport is playing a key role in sports in Utah, but also in economic development as a whole. And so as we pursue opportunities like this, that airport is part of the dialogue consistently. So the leadership that we have out there is staying on track. We will be delivering on time and in a way that we will probably be one of the best, if not the best, airports in the country when we're done.
Good. We got time for one more question. Another question? Anywhere? Hi, Kurt.
Jeff, when you say ready, willing, and able now, is the committee's outcome predetermined, or what would be the key issues you discuss still?
Well, I think if you were in the meetings with us, it's probably not predetermined, right, Fraser? There's a lot of work. I mean, if you looked at the detail, we owe it to the citizens, we owe it to our public officials to do a thorough job and make sure we look at it closely. We don't take it lightly. So when you look at the areas that we're going through and the level of detail and work that we're doing, they will be extensive. I mean, we're biased. You got to remember, at least Fraser and I are really biased. I think they are up here. So we're hoping we come back ready, willing, and able. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to do a thorough job.
Can I just make a point?
Okay,
One of the critical aspects to this will be public support. One of the reasons why we had such a successful experience before was that our community really rallied. The volunteerism was unprecedented. The work that's going to happen here is going to seek that public support and confidence that this can be done in a successful way. And so as optimistic as we are, and as much as we'd like to do that, the public has to see that this is good for the community and something that they embrace as well. And so that work has to be done.
Yeah. Let me just add to that. This is not just our first thought. This is something we've been thinking about for a number of years, to look and see about the possibility of doing this again. But the phrase that comes to mind is we want to make sure we do our due diligence. We're going to have to put pencil to paper and find out, what do we really expect it's going to cost us? What's going to be the revenue stream? So I think we all feel comfortable that we can be ready, willing, and able, and that there is public support based on polling that's been done previously. But now we're getting serious about it. Now, because of the dynamics, we've got to be ready next year to make a proposal if we're going to make one. So we're going to go through a process of due diligence, and I don't think the cake is pre-baked at all. It looks probably pretty good from our perspective, but we've got to go through this due diligence to know that we can and that we should, in fact, put a bid in to host the Winter Olympics in 2026 or 2030.
You know, I think the last time we did the survey, the favorabilities were in the high 80s was the number when we did our study. And that will be part of the research done. There will be a survey, and we'll look at what our citizens think. So any other questions before we wrap it up? Okay, thank you for coming, and remember, ready, willing, and able.